Notre Dame Cathedral, located on a small island in the center of Paris, France, is a Catholic cathedral built in the Gothic style. This structure has a history of over 800 years. It is one of the most important cultural heritage sites in France. On the 15th of April 2019, Notre Dame Cathedral, which was undergoing renovation, suddenly caught fire. Because the spire was made entirely of wood, it was engulfed in flames, and the fire caused the spire to be completely destroyed. The entire structure was severely damaged. During this fire, there was something many people didn't know. Notre Dame is not just a church. It also houses many cultural relics and works of art. Among them, one item is the most important holy relic in France and the entire Western Catholic world. It is the crown of thorns, believed to have been worn by Jesus during his passion. This item was enshrined in a reliquary in the nave of the cathedral for public veneration. But when the fire broke out, the entire roof of the nave was engulfed in flames. So, was this precious item saved? Today, we will tell the story behind this crown of thorns. In 2019, Notre Dame Cathedral was undergoing its first renovation in decades. Wooden scaffolding had been erected on the roof. On April 15th, at 6:50 p.m., many tourists on the banks of the River Seine saw a column of black smoke rising from the cathedral's wooden spire. They quickly took out their phones to call the police. The fire spread very quickly. 10 minutes later, billowing black smoke covered the sky over the River Seine. Less than a kilometer from Notre Dame is a Paris fire station. They departed immediately upon receiving the fire alarm, but it was rush hour in Paris, and the narrow streets were clogged with pedestrians and vehicles. It took the firefighters half an hour to reach Notre Dame, but they were helpless against the raging inferno. The cathedral's spire collapsed before everyone's eyes. An hour later, high-ranking officials, including the President of France, had arrived at the scene. A total of 400 firefighters participated in the rescue effort. At the scene, a team of firefighters was tasked with removing the precious relics from inside the cathedral, including Notre Dame's most important relic, the crown of thorns of Jesus Christ. But at that moment, the firefighters did not know the true location of this relic. When they entered the nave, they discovered that embers were falling from the roof. The situation was extremely urgent. After Notre Dame's wooden spire was destroyed, the fire at the scene began to spread to the two bell towers in front of the nave. In one of those towers, there were 8 giant bronze bells, supported by a wooden structure. Each bell weighed 4 tons. If the fire burned through the wooden structure, these bronze bells would fall onto the roof, causing a catastrophic chain reaction. At that time, experts estimated that if the bronze bells fell like iron balls, you could say the firefighters were racing against time. 22 kilometers from Notre Dame Cathedral at the Palace of Versailles, a man was attending an event. He received news that Notre Dame was on fire on his phone and immediately left the scene in a frantic rush. He was the cathedral rector of Notre Dame. At this moment, the firefighters in charge of rescuing relics began to search for the location of Jesus' crown of thorns. They went to the reliquary in the nave, but did not know how to open it. With the situation critical, they used a fire axe to pry open the case door. Inside was the legendary crown of thorns of Jesus Christ, secured in the middle with several steel wires. The firefighters carefully cut the steel wires and removed the crown. Finally, they had rescued the most precious relic of Notre Dame. However, as they ran outside, a statement from the priest left them devastated. It turned out that this crown on display was only a replica. The real crown was in a safe, and the location of this safe was known to only one person, the cathedral rector of Notre Dame. The firefighters had no choice but to return to the nave to find that secret safe. But they searched the entire nave and still couldn't find the safe. Suddenly, a firefighter noticed at the bottom of the reliquary, where the replica crown was kept, several strangely shaped keyholes. It turned out the secret safe was located directly beneath the reliquary, but they had no key and couldn't open the safe. Furthermore, this safe was welded to the floor and could not be moved. At this point, the fire had already spread into the nave. If the crown couldn't be saved, the entire cathedral would collapse. Finally, the cathedral rector arrived at Notre Dame, but was stopped by the police at the entrance. He hurriedly explained that he was the cathedral rector. In this urgent moment, the rector had to force his way through. He rushed into the nave, took out the safe key he carried with him, opened the safe, and took out a red box from inside. At the same time, inside the safe was also a nail that had crucified Jesus and a small vial of holy blood. Once outside, they opened the red box, and inside was the real crown of thorns of Jesus Christ. Immediately after the firefighters saved the crown, the roof of the nave burned through and collapsed, falling right onto the location of the reliquary. This rescue can be described as incredibly nail-biting. In many famous paintings depicting the Passion of Christ, we can see this crown of thorns. But those who don't understand might think this crown is just a symbol and not know that it actually exists. What is the origin of this crown? Is it really the one that Jesus wore? The legendary crown of thorns of Jesus is a crown woven from thorny branches that he wore on his head during his passion. Along with the shroud, the nails, and the holy blood, it is one of the most important holy relics of Christianity. This crown of thorns is divided into 3 parts and is placed in a protective case made of crystal, adorned with gold and precious stones. On 3 lapis lazuli decorations are the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the 3 persons representing the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. At 3 p.m. on the first Friday of every month, the crown of thorns is taken out from the safe by a priest for the faithful to venerate and kiss. Because the thorn bush is a shrub with many thorns, when Jesus was being crucified, the soldiers at the time used thorny branches to make a crown and placed it on his head, driving the thorns into his scalp to draw blood, and mockingly saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." Later, people often used the phrase, "a crown of thorns," to describe the sufferings of life. According to the scriptures, this crown of thorns was considered a holy relic as early as 409 AD and was kept in the city of Jerusalem. Later, in 1063, the crown was moved to Constantinople in the Roman Empire. Of these, dozens of thorns from the crown, also called holy relics, were removed and placed as holy objects for worship in major churches around the world. In 1238, the Emperor of Constantinople, Baldwin II, in an effort to save his crumbling empire, gifted the crown of thorns to King Louis IX of the Kingdom of France. Thus, King Louis IX had a special chapel built in Paris, which is Sainte-Chapelle, to house the crown of thorns. In 1801, after the French Revolution, this crown was moved to Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, just a few dozen meters from Sainte-Chapelle. Until the fire at Notre Dame in 2019, the crown is now kept at the Louvre Museum in Paris and is under strict guard. This crown of thorns is considered a first-class relic of Christianity, which means a part of a saint's body or any item stained with a saint's blood, such as the shroud, the nails, and the holy blood. These are all first-class relics. There are over 700 first-class relics in the world related to Jesus. Major churches all claim that the relics of Jesus they possess are authentic, especially the shroud of Jesus. To date, more than 40 have been discovered. The most famous is the Shroud of Turin, Italy, from the 14th century. It has been considered an authentic relic and has been venerated by countless believers because on this cloth is an imprint of Jesus' body from his lifetime. But in 1988, archaeological researchers from the University of Arizona, USA, and the University of Oxford, UK, cut a small piece of the Shroud of Turin and took it to a laboratory for testing. The results showed that this Shroud of Jesus dates back about 700 years, being a product of the Middle Ages, produced between 1260 and 1390. This does not match the time of Jesus' death according to legend, and also proves that the Shroud of Turin is not an authentic holy relic. But in history, did a person named Jesus really exist? If Jesus truly existed, has his tomb been found? According to historical records, Jesus was a Galilean Jew from the region of the Sea of Galilee in modern-day northern Israel. His birth date is around 6 BC. In 30 AD, when he was about 34 to 36 years old, he was crucified on a cross. But whether Jesus truly existed is still a matter of debate in academic circles. The majority of historians believe that in history, there really was a person named Jesus, because, besides the Bible, other ancient documents also record a lot about Jesus. These ancient documents were not for religious purposes, but simply to record world events at that time. Therefore, they believe that Jesus was a real historical figure, but just an ordinary person. He was not a god. It is very likely he was just a god, created by man to serve as an object of faith for Christian believers. But for hundreds of years, the research into the tomb of Jesus has never stopped. In 1980, a construction crew was working near southern Jerusalem and used explosives to break up a huge rock. Suddenly, a cave was discovered inside the rock. After preliminary research, this was a 2,000-year-old cave tomb. Archaeologists entered the cave and found that it was a tomb with a unique structure. The tomb had a central area from which several small chambers radiated. Each chamber contained a small limestone ossuary, exquisitely crafted, with a total of 10. These small ossuaries were moved to a museum. After being opened, they were found to contain skull and bone fragments. In fact, throughout the world, more than 1,000 such limestone ossuaries have been found. This was the form of burial for Christian missionaries after their death. But usually, it is very rare to find names engraved on these ossuaries. And when archaeologists cleaned this batch of ossuaries, they discovered on one of them an astonishing name engraved: Judah, son of Jesus. This immediately attracted the attention of archaeologists, as they had never found writing on these types of ossuaries, let alone the name of Jesus. History has also never recorded Jesus having a son. Could this be the secret family tomb of Jesus? Among the remaining ossuaries, could there be one for Jesus' wife? In the end, through comparative DNA testing of the skeletons, it was confirmed that the 10 individuals in the ossuaries were not blood relatives. Why they were buried together remains a mystery. However, Israel and Palestine, regarding the items excavated from this tomb, did not show particular interest. This is because in the old city of Jerusalem, there is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which has a history of over 1,800 years. This is the most sacred site in Christianity. Inside this church, there are 2 places of veneration. One is the place where Jesus was crucified on the cross, which includes a small hill, and another place is the empty tomb, believed to be where Jesus was buried. The altar of the crucifixion in the church, which is where Jesus was executed, has its rocks covered with glass. On the rock in the middle, there is a hole, which was where the cross was erected at that time. A replica of the cross and a statue of Jesus are placed in the center to recreate the scene of Jesus' passion. This place can be considered the most sacred site in all of Christianity, having been venerated by countless people for over 1,000 years. The second place is the empty tomb of Jesus. Legend has it that after Jesus died, he was taken down from the cross and buried there. This place has been built into a small chapel with a circular hall built around it, which is part of the church. So why is this place an empty tomb of Jesus? It's because the scriptures record that 3 days after his death, Jesus rose from this tomb and ascended to heaven. Therefore, some scholars suggest that Jesus, after being crucified, simply passed out and was then placed in this tomb, but not buried. Afterward, his followers used herbal aromatic oils to anoint Jesus' body. Under the stimulation of the herbal oils, Jesus suddenly regained consciousness. This led to the legend of Jesus' resurrection. As for why Jesus' body is not in this tomb, it was perhaps to prove to people that Jesus had indeed ascended to heaven, so they moved his body. Thus, the search for Jesus' tomb becomes even more hopeless. However, the debate over whether Jesus was a real person or not, whether he existed or not, is actually not that significant. Religion is a product of a certain stage of human societal development. While humans pursue material life, the pursuit of the spiritual and soulful lags further and further behind. Faith provides a spiritual anchor for people and is a form of spiritual comfort. Fundamentally, it is a driving force for survival. From this perspective, it is very meaningful. Alright, that is all the content for this video. Thank you for watching our channel. See you in the next episode.